Welcome to What's Good Under the Hood for another episode. Rob Sanders, Fox Sports Radio 1400, with a bit of a cold today. Are you all right?
I'm fine.
And next to him, owner of Mazda of Columbia, our great friend Greg Hood, the podcast named after him.
With no cold.
That's good.
I don't have one.
What's Good Under the Hood?
I don't think mine's a cold. I think I'm just like dust just gets me. I got a dust in this studio since this is my
Dust in
home
the wind.
studio here.
There you go.
Well,
Hey, I want to start this off, Mr. Woods, and I want to address something.
What?
In our last podcast, we were talking about Denny's, and you made a comment about you being a drug dealer, and it kind of took me back. I'm like, if you were, that wasn't something we really need to be talking about.
I was not a drug. I was referencing a song from the late 80s by a band called David and David. And one of the lines was he kept a booth at Denny's because he was a drug dealer, kept a booth at Denny's. And it just when Denny's came up, it reminded me of that song. So
You wanted to be a drug dealer. All right, I was just checking on
I've
you.
never done
I
them,
tell you
dealt
what.
them, and I do not.
Go back and watch the last podcast, and you should like and subscribe, by the way, and share the show with your friends. Greg and I cut a look at each other
Yeah.
like flying saucers of ninja stars were coming out of our eyes. Like, what did he just say?
Yeah, like, how do you
My
recover?
goodness.
How do you recover from that, my
Just
friend?
roll with it.
My drug dealer friend Andy Woods over here. Good
I am
grief.
not.
And see, so Andy's not into the whole drug thing. He just likes
I'd like to buy a nickel
Likes-
bag, please.
What is that?
There you go.
What's that?
What are you talking about, Greg? I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
my
know any of
gosh.
these things,
There's
but
that sound
Andy
again.
just likes the 80s music, man.
Yeah, he is 80s music. And you're in the music business, so it makes
Yeah.
sense.
You know,
Andy's been on every format, including his voice has been pretty much on every format ever, except for News Talk. I know that he obviously does country music now. He did retro rock. He did classic rock's the same thing. I think you've done top 40, right?
yeah, I did top 40.
Well, Rob, you do
early
weather.
80s.
I know I do the weather.
You
Yeah.
do
And
weather all the
traffic
time.
and
Yeah.
Oh,
sports.
and
I do
traffic and sports.
Yeah, I don't get to do the fun stuff like introducing like bands and stuff like Andy does, but Andy's also done some hip hop.
I did for a while.
He did, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Wow.
Andy Woods did some voice work for 100.1 The Beat
I did.
at one point, and he actually sounded like he was down with it.
Thank God
Yeah,
they have
right.
Miss Monique now. So take care of
Well, the guy that put him on is no longer here, so
There's not.
that may be
Was
part of it.
Was that BA?
That was
that
BA.
Brian Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have car stuff to talk about today, and
Used cars.
yeah, used cars.
39% price hike in used cars. Is that real? Is it true?
It is unfortunately true. The problem with that is that all the prognosticators are out there deciding that the whole world's going to collapse here in about 2 months, and I would say that it's going to probably check up a little bit in terms of values. But the other thing is that nobody's really talking about. But over the last couple of years, new car prices just on average went up about $6,000. So that from a starting point of there, that actually elevates the price of used cars in general.
Right.
But right now, one of the things that we're facing, as long as interest, and I read something that the average used car price now is about $30,000,
Good Lord.
which is a lot. But do the math on that. So yeah, $15,000 car is gone. There was an article in I think it was Automotive News or something where I read it. They were talking about some woman came into dealership to buy a car, and she had $7,500 to spend, and they sold her a car with 160,000 miles on it that was an old Scion. And it's true, because that's all you're going to get. So if we buy a older car with some miles on it, generally we're going to have a reconditioning expense that goes into that. So if I pay $3,500 or $4,000 for a car, I'm going to spend $1,500 to $2,000 on a car in reconditioning that has 160, 180,000 miles. Now that doesn't mean a car won't go a lot longer than that. They will. Matter of fact, I put a Ford Edge, 2000 Ford Edge, I put through the shop today that we took in trade, had 198,000 miles on it. And the only thing it needed was wiper blades, a cabin filter, and 4 tires.
Wow.
And that's but somebody maintained that vehicle. I'd feel better about that 200,000 mile car than I would feel about a lot of 50 or 60,000 mile cars nobody takes care of. But the prices are through the roof. So I don't know if I shared this before, but I had a salesman. We were going over to the Harley shop. He's dropping me off, and he said, "Hey, can you quit buying these expensive trucks and buy some $15,000 cars?" And I said, "There aren't any $15,000 cars. You can't buy a $15,000 car. If you do, it's over 100,000 miles."
I look at I have a Honda Civic, and I know that you're trying to get me out of it and want me to come and buy something down there from you, and I probably will end up doing that. But I bought it in 2015 as a brand new car with 8 miles on it, and I paid $26,000 for it.
Right.
And you're telling me a used car now is $30,000?
The average used car, that people are purchasing is 30 grand.
And
I had to, in our organization, I'm in a dealer group, and in our group, my overall inventory cost is less because I get to see everything. It's less than everybody else's, but I finally had to change my opinion and start spending more money on cars than I wanted to, because it was getting harder and harder to find them. So one of the things that's in our favor right now, everybody talks about, the crash of a used car. As new cars go up through inflation and the stuff that's going on, is that will help maintain the used car from diving. Now, I think it's probably plateaued, in my opinion, or it may regress a little bit. What will change that is interest rates. And to give you an example, right now, if you went out and bought a used car and you spent $30,000 on it, I'm going to ballpark in a couple of things. Your payment's probably about $465, $475
for a used vehicle.
Well, hear me out. Let me finish my story, and then you can raise your eyebrows at the rest of the story. Because if the interest rate all of a sudden, if they start going up, because that's the next thing to happen. If the interest rates start going up, all of a sudden your interest rate's at 10%. Now you can only buy a $25,000 car for that, roughly that same payment. So that $5,000 is sucked up by the lender instead of the cost of the car. That'll cause the market to sink a little bit, to pull back in itself of what is affordable to a customer. So that, I'm not hoping for that. There's probably a safe bet that they're going to go up a little bit. You buy a new car, right now you can get 2.5%, 3% interest on one from a credit union or whatever. There's pretty low rates, and used cars are just a little bit more because there's more risk in it for the lender, and that's why they have a higher rate on a used car. But they've made the car still more affordable, so that has allowed people to get into them.
I'm just stunned by that. But how do we fix it? And I mean, I guess fix it for the consumer, because you and I talked before we went on the air. In a couple of years, I'm going to have to buy my daughter her first car, and you're telling me that in theory I'm going to have to pay at least $30,000 for it, when my last new car I paid $25,000 for.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that yet, other than to say that there's some risk in that. I do think prices will kind of adjust themselves. In my fear from a dealer side is that I don't want to wake up one morning and all of a sudden I have $100,000 worth of water on my lot, because what we went out and bought and traded for is now, it's like playing the stock market. All of a sudden it's worth, if they're worth $4,000 less a car, and I've got 50 cars out there, all of a sudden I'm 200 grand backwards. I mean, so we've got a lot of risk in all of that. In buying a car, I try and, buy a couple, 2-3 weeks out, maybe 30 days out at the most. So if the market does take a hard shift, and that part of that will be dictated by new inventory levels coming up. As new inventory levels come up, obviously that prices, it's supply and demand. So prices will adjust themselves out. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but do you think that once we get back to a point where we're producing new cars at the level we were before COVID, that may level out the used car market, being that we'll have more new cars that are out there?
Yeah, it'll slow it down. And what I'm hoping, it just doesn't take a dive. We hope it walks it down kind of gradually.
Right.
Because it would be devastating to a lot of us in this business. And, there's all kinds of so much negativity flying out there, and all these articles you read talking, that are consumer friendly articles of talking about, well, sell your car now. If you're going to sell it, it's at the peak. Well, maybe it is, but why sell the car now if you still want the car? I mean, there's just crazy advice out there. All I can say is this: nobody really knows. And the inflation that's going on in a new car is helping to drive some of that. I mean, because if a Toyota pickup is $5,000 more than it was a year ago, then there's going to be a portion of that will stay in the used car, in the trade-in side, because you still got the gap between new and used. It won't stay what it is, though, to answer your question.
Well, it's the math part of it is just interesting to me. Andy, I was talking to my friend the other day in the gym, though, and they were talking about Carvana. And this is a guy that watches the show on YouTube, and John in the gym is a guy that tries to lift more weights than I do, and he fails regularly, but he does watch the show.
God,
So-
another humble brag.
Well, he's
there's
thank you
one
for that.
last podcast, and then we got
I
that
know,
one.
right? You get
No,
one
he was
show.
just talking about how great John is because
Yeah.
he watches the podcast,
That's what
not
I was
because he
going
can
after.
lift
John's
weights.
great because he watches the show, but he said, I'm thinking about buying a car with Carvana. Is that something that, and John's a guy that he likes the whole, and my
Can
wife
I
is
can
this
I
way
ask a
too.
question? Did John miss something up in the upper corner of our podcast that he watches that says Mazda of Columbia?
Thank
What
you.
in the world?
Very good observation.
Well,
Greg
that's
Hood.
that's kind of what I went to him with. I'm like, dude, why would you want to go to that when you can go and go to Mazda of Columbia and you actually test drive
I
a
like-
car?
I like the process of buying a car.
Okay, so let's throw a rock at what
John,
at Rob.
Let's be nice to John. He watches the
I
show
love
now.
John. John
What
is
up,
the best.
John?
All right.
John's a little weaker than everybody, but he's a great guy.
Exactly.
No, but so here's my take on Carvana. I didn't quite understand the concept of building a building that made it look like a candy machine. But okay, they want to build vending machines for cars. Great, that's their shtick. But Carvana is having some problems, and their stock is still performing pretty well. I looked at it the other day, and I'm surprised by it. But I'm not telling their laundry that isn't already out there in all the attorney generals across the United States. And that is that they sold a bunch of cars they don't have titles to. So they're doing a couple things. And first of all, Carvana is probably, I wouldn't pick it as your best place to buy a car just financially, because the only place they can acquire a vehicle is through an auction. If they're going to, there's some trades, or they're auctioning or they're buying it from the public. So if they're buying it from the public and they go out and they put out a really big number on that car to buy it, they've got to put a bigger number on that car than me to buy it, or they're going to take it away from me, the dealer, in a transaction. So when they do that, that means they're in the car more. So if they're in the car more, they're going to have to sell it for more. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to that, and I don't have some real hate for online buying of a car, and we'll certainly accommodate somebody if they want to, and we take really good pictures, and they do too, and they do great. But the one thing that you can't do when you buy a car from Carvana, even though they give you some return policy, is drive it. I won't buy a used car without driving it. When we take a car in trade at our dealership, we don't give it the old Hiawatha appraisal. We go out and we drive the car. That's the way we refer to it in the car business. But the point is, we go out and we drive the automobile. The reason why is we're buying that car. So why would we expect a consumer to, now we want them to trust us, but why would we expect them to not be able to drive an automobile? And I'll give you an example. So used car, I was coming down here to the station. Used car came up to the front line. The detailer dropped it off, and I was walking outside. I said, here, give me the keys. I'm going to take that for a little spin here. So we have a quality control process in our shop. After a car goes through for reconditioning, the service manager himself drives the car. Well, I try and drive used cars from time to time too. It's kind of a check in the checker. And I hopped in this car, and the first thing that hit me in the forehead was that it said tail light out. Brake light out.
that's not good.
No, well, what it turned out is that there was we replaced a license plate light on the back of it, because I called the service manager on the way here. I said, "Do you drive this car?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, was there a light on?" He goes, "Well, yeah, but I remember we were waiting for the light part to come in, and it came in, but I drove it the day before because all it needed was the light part."
Right.
So we had a breakdown in our process there of something which is very, very minor. But the point is that, I would want, before I spent my hard-earned money on something, I want to put my hands on it. Somewhere along the way in my brain, it says, and this is just my brain, small as it is, says that if you're going to want to return your car to Carvana, it ain't going to be super easy. They're going to try and resist something because they want to keep their deal together and make their money. But the other thing is I believe in buying local. I mean, if you live in this market, and I'm supporting people that live here, work here, taxes go here, why in the heck do we want to give them to Carvana?
Yeah,
So take care
John,
of your own.
Yeah, John, take your butt down to Mazda of Columbia.
And John, you
and
should
get
have
a
been here
car.
already. If you watched the podcast, unless you don't like the podcast.
He just asked me this, and I was like, well, I'll ask Greg on
I'll
the podcast.
tell you what it boils down to. Everything is marketing. So, I market, they market, everybody's competing for that customer's dollar. And I may not have the car that he's looking for that he wants. I get that. I can't sell a car to everybody, but I'm going to guarantee you this: somewhere in this market, him living here, somewhere in this market, somebody's got something he could drive other than going to that kind of a place and buying one.
But
go ahead, Andy.
Every time I see the Carvana commercials or any of those, because there are a few of them that will deliver cars to your house, You don't even have to leave.
I'll deliver a car to your house.
You don't even have to leave your home to get a car. That's the whole point of having a freaking car. To leave the house. If you're that set on staying at your house and never leaving, why do you need a freaking car anyway? You don't have to leave your point. You don't have to leave your house to buy a car.
You've got a car. Get in the car. Go to the car dealership. Get another car.
Leave your old one. Bring home a new one. Test drive it.
But you know what drove all that is COVID. COVID's what made Carvana really. They got lucky. They were bumping along and doing okay. And then when COVID hit, they appealed to all the stuff that you're hearing of staying away and contactless deliveries and all that, which most of the dealerships will do. I mean, it's no different. And, the internet's changed everything for us because I sell cars to Pennsylvania and Arizona and all kinds of places. If they can't find a car, because that's what, Auto Traders and Car Gurus and all those companies do. They're aggregators that, put all that stuff online that displays our inventory all across the country. And so, everybody can do what they do. There's nothing unusual to it. I will say this to them, though. They take really good pictures.
And I think the vending machines are kind of cool. I didn't know if they were real or not. And my folks were driving through Atlanta. And my mom, who's good on the iPhone, finally, after I've instructed for years and years, took a picture of the car tower, the Carvana tower, and said they are real. I didn't think they were real. I thought that was just something they put in the commercial.
It's weird, though, when you drive by one and they're empty.
Do you get the big coin like the?
I've never been to a Carvana. I've just, when I lived in Florida, they had one when you're on your way. I think it was in Sarasota or something along the interstate there.
They FedEx you a big coin.
So if under that logic, if we put a vending machine of cars at Mazda of Columbia, do we get a big coin with Greg's face on it?
It's not a Bitcoin; it's a big coin. Yeah, you can invest in Bitcoin.
No, you mentioned earlier about you may not be able to have a car for everyone, but in theory, if I came to you and said, "Hey, Greg, within the next 60 days, I'd like to have my dream car, a 2015 Jeep Wrangler," can you get it? In theory.
Yeah, I can get it. And a lot of times I'll end up with it in that period of time. Here is the hard part of buying for somebody that says there is no used car factory. So, and no two used cars are the same, which kind of ties back to what I said about Carvana. You got to put your hands on it and touch it.
Right.
Unless you really don't care. If you're buying some very generic car and you just need to get to point A and point B, then
it's interesting how you just avoided any kind of brand name when you called that out.
Well,
because you had one in mind.
I did.
I know you did.
I did, but
I think he was about to take a dump on my Jeep Wrangler that I like.
I got a really nice one sitting out front, by the way. It's a white one. It's beautiful and it's lifted and it's even got electric running boards on it and the whole bit.
Have the lights underneath, the LEDs underneath.
Oh, yeah, it's got the full package.
Yeah.
But that being said, is that the hard part for me would be if you said, "Hey, I want you to buy me a Kia Stinger." And I'd say, "Okay, and I want the GT." And all right, I want it in red. All right. I got to go online and compete with people to try and buy that car. And all of a sudden, if I buy the car and then it gets to the lot and you go, "Oh, I changed my mind,"
then you're stuck with it
at too much money. So it's hard. That doesn't mean it's impossible. And yeah, I've filled the needs of customers many times on that, but it's especially in this climate, it's really hard. So you got to have a range of money. I did have a salesperson that came to me a couple of months ago, and she said her uncle wanted to he wanted a 2,500 Denali, and he would spend up to $70,000, and he wanted it could be a 19, whatever heck it happened to be. I started looking online, and one of the cool things about Carfax is that you can click on the button, and it'll open up an MSRP for you. And all these 2-year-old Denalis were bringing more than MSRP. The last thing I was going to do is buy a truck at more than MSRP and have the guy change his mind or not like it. So I was kind of out on that deal. If it was a $20,000 car, I'd take the risk. At $70,000, I'm probably not your guy to go get you a car.
But you're going to be able to get people cars, especially at the all-new Mazda of Columbia.
The all-new Mazda Columbia.
Real quick,
hanging stuff down there. It looks cool.
In like 15 or 20 or 30 seconds. How's the build out going?
15 or 20 or 30?
Yeah, just quick.
I'm going to burn up about 15 seconds talking about the 15, 20 or 30.
How's the construction going?
Great.
Good.
Great. I realized something though.
Yeah.
When you are doing construction on a building, I would think that people who are architects, and that's just a blanket statement, architects would know that you need certain things if you've been doing this for the last how many years in building Mazda dealerships or Kia dealerships or Toyota dealerships. There's certain things that go into what happens in a shop. And when I found it fascinating that nowhere, anywhere in the plans were there a place for a sink for the technicians to wash their hands. Like, what?
Just bottles of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, well, that doesn't work. And the last thing you want them to do is being all greasy and walking into their area, their locker room, and greasing everything up and the sinks and all that. I'm not doing that. So I had one put in, but it's after the fact. They got to cut into the concrete and all that stuff.
You put it outdoors, didn't you? Did you put it outdoors?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
out there by the toilet.
by
Put it
the
by the
outhouses.
outhouse.
It's the way we
Yeah.
do it, man. We're saving money, so we can pass it on to our customers.
We're done. Hey, as the scroll says in the bottom, please like, subscribe, and share the show.
Do it in 15, 20, or 30 seconds.
And thanks for hanging out with us today. Bye. It's What's Good Under the Hood.